He was the first to make your heart pound.
Where is he?
He was the first to make you scream for mercy.
He's probably out there somewhere.
He's the first name in terror. And he's about to meet the last word in destruction.
Don't want to mess around with me.
Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood. Rated R. Starts Friday, May 13th at a theater near you.
Well, we're celebrating a national holiday here at ReconCinemation. That's right. It's Friday the 13th, and we are so excited to take a look back at the next chapter in the evolution of this series. Welcome to ReconCinemation. I'm John Diner.
I'm David Munchak.
And I'm Brent Hutchins.
And this is the podcast that takes a look back at some of our favorite films from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And man, we got a great one here today. It's Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood.
I can't believe we're already at Part 7. This is bananas.
I know. It's we've gone through every film up until this point. It feels like we were just on, Brent, you joined us for the second. We've done
the second one was my first.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the first Friday the 13th was one of our very first episodes, all of which you can hear in the archives at ReconCinemation.com. We're taking a look back at the evolution of the entire franchise, from the birth of it and Sean Cunningham and the creation of the first film to the success in those early films, 2 and 3, and where it sort of peaks with 4, then the creative shift, which ends up alienating a lot of fans with 5, and then 6, the kind of meta movie that was Part 6, and then now here we are in 1988 with Friday the 13th Part 7, which in general, just a quick, do we like this movie? Brent, what do you have to say?
Quickly, yes. The answer is yes. I do enjoy this one. I've always liked this one, though. We'll get into it more about,
You are nuts. I don't believe you. You people give me the creeps.
When it was first introduced to you, when you first started seeing it, and like all those memories. But yeah, I this one really resonated with me for a couple different reasons, and I still enjoy it. Like even going back and rewatching it now, like I still enjoyed it. I mean, obviously, you're 7 movies deep on the franchise. There's a lot of rinse repeat, but there's a lot of fun things I think that they did in this one as well that I really enjoy. So yeah.
And where do you rank it, compared to the other ones? Obviously it's up near the top for you, right?
It is. I mean, it's hard. I don't want to, I don't want anybody to go back and fact check me, because I'm sure in each one of these that we've done, we rank them every single time. And I don't know. I'm sure it changes each time we watch them, because it's fresh in your brain after seeing it. But this one has always been up at the top. I think it's probably, just thinking through it quickly, maybe my third favorite, because I think I like 4, the first one, and this one, and in that order. Asking me right now, those are probably the order. But like thinking back, 6 I really liked. Like after watching Part 6, that surprised me. 3 is a lot of fun. 2 is good. I don't know. But at this current moment, thinking through it, yeah, it's probably my third favorite, but it's always kind of more towards the top.
I got the sense that you didn't feel that way, as we've been referencing, covering this in the future. And you guys keep making fun of the fire starter aspect of it all. I thought you guys were like not on board with this movie whatsoever. And that's what I'm just like, oh, interesting.
Yeah, no. So you're not wrong. There's definitely a lot of making fun of this movie, but I think that's also why I like it as much as I do. Like there's elements to this that are kind of so bizarre and so different compared to the other movies. It certainly stands out against them, and it's not just a retread, like, and some of the elements in it, like I do like, I'm a sucker for telekinesis. So like, that kind of stuff.
You have a telekinesis fetish, would you say?
One could say that. I'm a fan. I used to walk around the house pretending to move things in my head. And most kids probably did that thinking that they had the force and they were moving things because they were Luke Skywalker. Not me. Nope. I was doing it because of this movie and Tina Shepard. And that's the facts, guys.
Tina Shepard's #1 fan in the house.
Yeah.
You are not, I mean, I don't know about girls, but you're not a boy if you did not just double check to see if you had telekinesis. Like you put at some point in your life, you just had to try. Like, okay, got to make sure.
I'm sure I bursted many blood vessels in my face trying to.
And then you convince yourself that it moved. You convince yourself like that just moved. It did move.
It definitely moved. It definitely moved. But then I hit puberty and I lost all that power.
Exactly. Yeah, it all goes away.
Yeah.
I think it's always something that you try. I'm definitely with you, Brent, as far as liking telekinesis is definitely a cool ass power, from Luke Skywalker to your Cable and Jean Grey's. That's probably more my speed, but of course, we see it everywhere in all sorts of things, like with Carrie and where else do we see telekinesis in popular culture?
Well, you see it in many of the Marvel movies now, but back then,
Sure.
I don't know that you saw it. I mean, you saw it, yeah, like you said, in Carrie, in Star Wars. Star Wars was huge, So I mean that it's not like it was unseen at the time, but I feel like now in just about everything, you could, every other movie you flip on one of your streaming services, there's probably someone in there that has telekinetic powers.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, like I was digging this entry to at least, all right, we're gonna up the sort of supernatural aspect. She's got our main final girl has telekinesis, psychological trauma, and resurrection powers, as we see. So this is an exciting way to go into a new direction. So I'm like, okay, this is great. It's not just a slasher film, and it's not necessarily trying to like upend your expectations, like with the one where Jason's not even in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so like this is kind of an exciting way to twist to go. So regardless of actual execution, I applaud them for trying.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I really appreciate it's such a mixed bag, because I really appreciate the effort of coming up with something new and creative to try to like inject some life into this franchise. It doesn't always, I mean, just as a whole, the movie doesn't always work, and we'll get into why. I mean, there's specific reasons that really hurt this movie, specifically in post-production. But
well, and I think, and I know we're going to get into this, but just to say, I think that was probably, at the time, because they didn't want it to be a retread. They were looking for some kind of new and exciting way to inject a little bit more energy and freshness into the series. And during research for this, like, this is when the original idea of Jason versus Freddy first came up, and they pitched it to New Line, and obviously it was a great idea, but Freddy didn't need any help at this time. Like he was king of the horror franchise at this moment in time.
He's 1988 is Freddy's most successful year financially, and
absolutely.
He's making more than double what Jason's bringing in.
Absolutely. So it was not necessary for them to really, like, from a New Line standpoint, they're like, well, we don't need this, like this is just a crutch to help a competitor. Like, let's not do that.
Right.
So Paramount pivoted and decided to go with kind of more the Jason versus Carrie approach,
right.
Strategically avoiding any kind of copyright or licensing issues with Carrie specifically, but that's kind of where the idea blossomed from.
Yeah, it's interesting too to see where, these we were talking about ranking these movies and where they fall in for each of us, and that changes over time. I think people are really down on the first movie now. I've always loved the first movie. It's so different than the rest, but it's much more of a straight, horror movie.
Who are those people? Like, I mean, I don't disagree with you.
I
don't
can
need
name
specific
them.
but it's newer audiences, right?
Yeah.
People that are, younger getting introduced to this. So
Yeah.
their expectation is always Jason.
Right.
They don't.
Yeah. Obviously the first one is so different without Jason and with a different, different killer. But yeah, I don't, for me, this is probably top 5. I think my order is 4, 1, 6, maybe 2, then 7.
Wow.
Okay.
All right.
What am I missing?
Wow.
And then
I can get to that order
3
on a day.
then maybe 3 and 5 or 5 and 3. They're sort of interchangeable there. But
really?
I really
5
like
is
those.
so god awful though. Wait.
5 is?
Yeah. 5
Well,
is
yeah.
the
I
worst.
just think there's some really creative kills in that one. That's what's bringing me back to it. The story is obviously completely derailed the franchise and the turned a lot of fans away, and that's where it really 6 is feeling the after effects from 5. 7, like they never recover from it.
No, never. I'm just surprised to hear for you that 3 and 5 are maybe somewhat interchangeable. 3 to me is iconic in that's where he gets the masks and there's all those kind of great creative 3D kills. So that's all.
3 are just for the character depth in these movies is not huge, but I find the characters in 3 in particular like just really annoying and unlikable, and they're just that really pulls it back to the back of the line for me. So
that's fair.
The state of horror in 88 is it's like sequel city. There is remakes and sequels all over the place, some which have an enduring legacy and some do not. I mean, just to rattle off some of the big ones: The Blob, Brain Damage, the first Child's Play movie, big hit; Elvira, Mistress of the Dark; Fright Night 2, Halloween 4, which we covered. You can check it out in the archives at ReconCinemation.com. Hellraiser 2, Howling 4, Killer Clowns from Outer Space; Maniac Cop, great Bruce Campbell movie.
Yes.
Night of the Demons, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, which we will cover later on this year; Phantasm 2, Poltergeist 3, Pumpkinhead, Return of the Living Dead 2, The Serpent and the Rainbow, and Sleepaway Camp 2. So,
how many of those have you all seen?
All of them.
Yeah, I've seen most of them.
Multiple times I've seen all of them.
I've seen like maybe 2.5.
I take it back. I don't think I've seen Brain Damage, but other than that, I've seen all of those multiple times.
One I just recently got back into is The Blob. I love the 1988 Blob.
That's the one with Matt Dillon? Kevin Dillon.
Kevin Dillon.
Yeah.
And Shawnee Smith.
Okay.
It's awesome. I used to love that.
It's a lot of fun. We'll have to cover that at some point here.
Yeah, that was one of my grandparents. That was on one of the couple movies that I would watch over at my grandparents' house, who my uncle lived with them, and he had a cool collection.
Yeah.
The Elvira movie's always been on my to watch list, just to check it out, like by the curiosity of it, because I've always liked her from TV.
Yeah,
but and all that, but like hers is super, like it's purposely comedic, right? Like
yes.
her movie, it's like a straight horror comedy, right?
Yeah, yes.
It's like Joe Bob Briggs and like it's kind of one of those like late night. I mean, even the movie is done in kind of her late night host thing. I mean, she's more involved in some of the film throughout, but like they cut in pieces of that as well. But yeah, like I remember late at night, Saturday nights, maybe, like her show on TV. I think I saw Elvira, Mistress of the Dark at the theater.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, our friends over at Laser Graves, I believe, covered that film, so you can check that out in their library. So,
And I was absolutely terrified by the idea of Child's Play, so I didn't see that for a number of years because I'm like, nope, that's actually scary. Nope,
yeah,
not into it. Forget it.
yeah, and these are, you know, they're
I was 8 years
ranging.
old at the time, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's another like new idea at the time,
Yeah.
right? Like there are some in that group that I read off. Like there's some good quality horror films, and then some, and a lot of retreads and trying to recapture what worked with the original or the, you know, the earlier days of these franchises, and you know, quite a number of them not working, not hitting. You know, we're not at our 1988 is not a creative peak for horror. You know, we're years past that at this point, and the market has been so saturated. You know, partially because of it. I mean, starting with the success of Halloween, followed immediately by Friday the 13th, followed a couple of years later by Nightmare on Elm Street. So, you know, you have these powerhouses and then this like army of imitations following it, just really trying to milk it out and you know, find that next hit. But rarely does it come for many of these sequels. You know, we're deep into in our coverage here on the podcast on Friday of not just Friday the 13th, but Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street. We're getting deep into the middle sections of those franchises, and you know, it's interesting because 1988 is a huge year financially for Freddy Krueger, but Halloween's trying to come back, doesn't really work. But so we'll get into like where they all kind of play off of each other. But
and I wanted to look up to see where are we in the Ghoulies series. There have been 2 Ghoulies movies up to this point, but interesting connection to this movie for Ghoulies 3 to come out in 1990. Right. So I'll point that out when we start talking about it.
Yeah. I just watched the first 2 Ghoulies for the first time in forever. My God, those are
they goofy?
Else.
Those are goofy movies.
Yeah, especially the second one.
Okay. Well, and Ghoulies 3 is 2 years away. Ghoulies go to college. So just
of course they do.
Man, I love
But
it.
I think that this Friday the 13th Part 7 is a sort of a sizzle reel for the filmmakers of Ghoulies Part 3. Anyway.
Yeah.
So when was let's go back in our personal archives here. David, when was the first time you saw Friday the 13th Part 7?
This week.
Bingo.
Wow. Okay.
There you go.
You are the new blood.
I am the new blood. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's not surprising for our regular listeners. David, not as well
not
versed.
Not, you know, it was not an interesting these types of movies were not my first choice at the rental stores, so or particularly the theater. So yeah, then again, not surprising. Not much else to say about it though.
All right, Brent, first time viewing for you, probably not the theater, right?
Nope, not the theater, but I would have. I mean, I know both of our stories are going to sound really similar, but you know, when I was growing up, they used to have these things called video stores, which we've talked about quite a bit because both you and I used to work at video stores in high school. But even before that, they used to have video sections at the grocery store. And so the local grocery store where I grew up was called Gerlin's. And I remember they would put out sort of a monthly pamphlet, a monthly kind of brochure or kind of a release schedule, but it had, you know, like cover art and pictures and kind of a synopsis of what the different movies are and when they would come out. And I remember that when this movie was coming out, the cover art on that magazine was the poster for the movie. And I was, for whatever reason, just drawn to it. And I probably grabbed, I don't know, 10 of those pamphlets, and I cut the pictures out, and I because I was hanging posters in my room now, and I would often get these little pamphlets and cut the covers off and use them as little mini posters when I couldn't get the big poster. But I had several of these wallpapered on my wall. I eventually got the full movie poster and hung it, and it was, it was a big deal. I was really, really excited for this movie. And I'm certain that as soon as it came out on video, I figured out a way to watch it. So I don't know when that was exactly. This, I think, dropped in May of '88. So it's probably early '89, if I had to guess. But I definitely was ready for it. I was very excited for it. This is the first Friday the 13th movie that had been released that I was kind of aware and conscious of as a person who was excited about new and upcoming movies. The other ones were releasing and I was aware of them, and I'd see them at my neighbor's house late at night because they had HBO and whatnot. And we've talked about that in the past, but this is the first one that dropped, and I was like, shit, this is coming. I'm ready. I want to watch this. And so, yeah, I was stoked. I was ready.
Yeah, that's I hadn't thought about the videos in the grocery store section, because that's usually a smaller section.
Oh yeah.
But they'd only have a certain amount. But yep, totally remember that.
At my it was 3 aisles or whatever, and at my grocery store, it was right when you walked in the front door.
Yeah,
you walk in, the front of the store would kind of lead you to the right as you come in, and then on the left they had a little section cut out. It was 2-3 rows, maybe not high, just long.
Yep.
And you could walk through there and find videos, and then you go into the produce section or whatever. I would always go there and just look around.
Yeah. I remember some pharmacies had it too. There was some local pharmacies that had just very random, 50 movies, and that was it. But
yep.
Yeah, those are the days. But there are still video stores. They're out there. There's Videotech. There's Vidiot's is soon to come back. So support your local video stores where you have them.
I have the Price Chopper was my grocery store that had movies at one point, and I think maybe Garrity's, the other chain in my area, had dabbled in video rentals for a minute. I think I've rented 1 or 2 movies from the Price Chopper. Price Chopper's still around apparently. So
excellent.
So anyway, I just assume
go in the back, see if they've still got those videotapes.
You got them tapes?
Who would do that is our friend EK from Laser Graves. He would he goes everywhere and specifically asks, do you still have any videotapes sitting in the back, and half the time they do.
Really?
Yeah. So that's where he gets. He's a VHS collector, and that's where he gets some really good ones that people just don't know are valuable or rare, for whatever VHS is now. But mostly
EK is a human divining rod. He can seek out VHS tapes where none would be found.
So I remember, I've talked about the same story, on the last few Friday the 13th episodes, but I used to wander the aisles of my local video store, Movies One, and always was just visually attracted to the horror section because they were the most interesting posters and cover, box art for the VHS tapes. And the Friday the 13th ones were all of them. Say what you want about the movies, but the posters they're really cool looking posters still today. Part 4 with the mask with the axe in it, or the with just blood everywhere, and I think 6 is where Jason's shadow sort of standing over the grave, the headstone. Just beautifully drawn posters. And even the first one with his kind of outline over the camp, and you see the counselors.
I love the first poster.
It's a great. They're all great posters. So, and this was another one, just obviously it's all about the showdown, right? So the split image poster of half Jason's face and half Tina's face, beautiful, and definitely not Lar Park Lincoln as the actress for the model for the poster image, but you get it all the same. So yeah, fascinated with that. But I didn't actually see the movie until another co-host here of ReconCinemation through a certain party back in our college days where we just had a tremendous amount of fun, and lots of things were happening at that party. We'll leave a lot of that out. But in one of the rooms, I think it was just in the living room, really, we were running the Friday the 13th movies as a marathon, and just come in and out. Like, we would play drinking games to the movie, and
yeah, that was the first gathering of the Voorhees Institute.
That was the very first one. Yeah.
Yep.
But a lot of fun to be had there. And these are great movies to watch as a group. I mean, they're not movies you're going to take seriously and, break apart thematically. And that's not what they're trying to do. That's just get a group together. You have fun. You make fun of it. You laugh along with it. You get your horror scares and your interesting kills along with it. And so that was where I first saw the seventh movie, and I always really liked it. I thought it didn't get enough credit. I felt like maybe not all of the actors, but some of the actors were very good.
Yeah, I think the lead actors, all the secondary actors, like the teens and the whatever, like they're all kind of garbage. I mean, not to, I don't want to be mean if anybody's listening, but they're just they're not original, they're just kind of retread. There's no they
don't have a lot to work with.
Yeah.
Frankly,
like they're not given a lot. No.
That's fair. But I mean, neither is Dr. Cruz, like he's got a few scenes, but he's amazing in them. He might be the best actor that's ever been in any of the Friday the 13th movies.
We're the heads of the Terry Kiser fan club here.
Tina, shh. You have to come back with me now, please.
What are you doing here? Where's my mother?
She's back at the house. Come on, please.
You're lying.
Tina, I'm not lying.
You're lying. I was just there.
I tell you to come back. I mean it.
So Terry Kiser is he hits Friday the 13th, Mannequin, and Weekend at Bernie's. All of those franchises.
Yeah.
The master of.
Well, and he's great in this, and so is Tina Shepard.
Lar Park Lincoln is great. I think she's really good.
Oh wow!
I think there's some solid, especially the two of them and Susan Blue, who's the mother. I think those are all specifically really good performances and a lot better than than we got in part 6 and part 5, and probably at least since part 4, it's the best acting performances.
That's fair, and I feel like we have to mention Kane Hodder.
Oh well, yeah, we're gonna get to Kane Hodder. Kane Hodder is his own section in the encyclopedia. So
yeah.
But yeah, so talking about where the status of the franchise is at this point, it's not in good shape. We talked about the disappointment, I think financially and creatively from part 5. Part 6 you can look at with and have a lot of fun with, but it didn't hit for people, and the series is really on a downward slide creatively and financially. So here we are. So the 6th film comes out in 1986. This one doesn't come out until 88. In between, Paramount had actually greenlit Friday the 13th, the series, along with Star Trek: The Next Generation. They pitched both of those at the same time, and both were big hits. Obviously, The Next Generation was a much bigger hit, but Friday the 13th, the series, went on for 3 seasons.
Did you guys ever watch that?
I did a long time ago. I have not seen it recently.
I saw a couple back then. I don't remember any of it though. I remember the intro a little, but that's it.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, the only thing that it really had going for it that related it to the movies was, I think, there in the opening credits there was a hockey mask, but beyond that,
well, and even that was much debated. They really did not want to link it to the movies. They wanted it to be separate, and the writers of the show were, and even Frank Mancuso, who's the producer of everything since part 2, question that of like, okay, it's called Friday the 13th. Are people going to be wanting to see Jason and turn away when they don't see him?
I did. I
lot
was
of
not a
people
fan.
did.
I was not a fan of the show at the time because I wanted to see Jason.
Yeah.
So with 3 seasons, they never jumped into the movies.
No,
at
they
all?
specifically wanted to stay away from it. They didn't want to pay, you know, as we know now, in reality, there are a tremendous amount of rights issues about
Yeah.
who wrote what, when, who owns the rights to Jason versus the franchise itself and the characters. And so, I mean, that was a known thing even in the mid 80s. So they wanted to steer clear of that. And the show was about it was
kind of Warehouse 13 type kind of deal where it's like possessed items.
Right.
They were going to go like this, you know, squad would go and find and put in this pawn shop.
Yeah, essentially. It was these two cousins who inherited this pawn shop called Curious Goods that you know, all these artifacts there were haunted, and as each episode would focus on a different artifact and its backstory and, you know, however they dealt with it. But so very different than the movies.
Yeah, like not a need at all to be related to Friday the 13th. Only just in trying that is I assume an attempt to grab audience members.
Yeah. And at the same time, Nightmare on Elm Street, the series, is also out.
And fucking awesome.
Yeah, and hosted by Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger.
Yeah,
so
complete polar opposites. Couldn't be more different.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you couldn't have Jason host the show, you know.
No.
But you could have had a proxy and he could have just been there silently, like, you know, reacting to the you know, you get like a goofy like character to like sort of host the show. And he's just there with a machete, like, you know.
Maybe
and like
what
if Elvira hosted, like Elvira
perfect.
said,
Elvira,
what do you think of that, Jason? And just she's cracking jokes and making puns.
If anybody could have tamed Jason, it would have been Elvira.
Elvira v. Jason v. Freddy. That's what I want to see.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it'd be a pun. It'd be a joke off between her and Freddy. But, you know, I think it would really confuse Jason a lot. I don't think Jason makes it out of that 3-way battle.
Yeah. So, you know, Frank Mancuso is trying to lead the charge to, you know, the franchise is still making enough money to warrant making sequels. It wasn't losing money yet. So they still were planning to move forward, and they're, you know, at the same time that they're doing the series, they're starting to finally coming around to pitching part 7. And they bring out Frank hires at this point, Frank Mancuso's producing other projects too, and isn't as hands-on as he had been for all the prior films. So he brings on an associate producer named Barbara Sachs to kind of be more of his eyes and ears on the film and kind of lead the way in his absence. But and he would be sort of the overall decision maker. But you know, Nightmare on Elm Street is the big enemy at this point, and they're, you know, as we mentioned, very successful. We just covered Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, Dream Warriors. Check that out in our archives at ReconCinemation.com. It's you know, a big success, a big hit, and that would even be topped later in 1988 by Part 4, Dream Master. So, you know, they've got to find a way to keep up with Freddy, and the only thing to do is kind of come up with a new creative spin and a different, fresh idea. The initial idea was sort of based on Jaws and was more of a political thing about this development company who comes into Crystal Lake and is going to, you know, trying to hide the history of Crystal Lake and build these condos that it was going to sell off, where, you know, at the end of the movie, Jason finally reveals himself and kills everybody. But it was a very different, you know, interpretation of it. And Barbara Sachs wanted to make a serious movie. She had every intention of making it as dramatic as possible and pushing for like Oscar caliber people, to the point where Fellini was pitched as being brought in as the director.
What?
That can't be real. I mean, it just.
I mean, I
gotta get Fellini.
I wasn't in the room, but I've seen that from multiple sources.
No, I know. I mean, I saw it in a bunch of different things as well. It just seems
That would
so.
Yeah,
That's
it's just
bold. Now that
Yeah.
is bold.
exactly.
I mean,
But
this
at
is
this-
like Tarantino doing Star Trek, right? Like we got to get somebody else in there outside of the whole thing. We're going to shake things up. We're going to change it. We're going to make it big and
Yep.
good. Sorry. That's what it
But
sounds like.
they hired screenwriter Daryl Haney, who's actually writing the script, who was not in support of that idea and knew, what fans wanted to see, which was the teens and the at Crystal Lake and the formula that had been working. So when Frank Mancuso gets this, I don't know if it was a full script or a treatment. He's like, what is it? No, like, let's get back to the basics here. So try again. And and then that's where they come up with, what if, like in a last ditch pitch, Haney just is like, well, what if what would Jason do if he had to fight Carrie? And that kind of piqued everyone's interest. So that's where the idea came from, of introducing, obviously not exactly Carrie, but a character with telekinetic powers, and building to this ultimate showdown of Jason finally getting his comeuppance. And that's closer, I guess, closer to what, and then mix in the teens and the usual, the formula of, I think Mancuso had told Haney, like, look at the final chapter, look at part 4, follow that formula and just add this in. And that's basically what we have.
Right.
I think I've cracked. I'm going to reveal it now in the middle of this episode, though. I cracked how we reboot the franchise successfully.
Ooh, do tell.
Go for it.
Ready? Okay, it's gonna be crazy, but you got to roll with it. Jason Voorhees, from an alternate reality, appears and starts taking down the evil version of himself, because this Jason Voorhees thinks he's good, and he's got to take down this version of himself who is the most, in almost all realities, is always a bad guy. But there's a good Jason Voorhees that will start to try to eliminate him from killing more teens. And the more he does that, the more powerful he becomes, until one of the evil Jasons like wins and then becomes the new like face of the franchise. What do you think?
I was going to ask, so is this good Jason Voorhees? Is he like a version that didn't die because the counselors were off having sex, and he's grown
up? That
was
my question.
And he was like a camper, and then a counselor, and then he owned the camp, and then like, is that how this goes?
Yeah. I think he still underwent some trauma, but he doesn't die. And then because in most realities he is destined to be dead and a murderous guy, he is affected by that, and he figures out a way to connect himself to all the other Jasons. So then you can have him dip into every movie that we've seen, just in case we want to say, oh, this Jason isn't exactly the same Jason from this.
He's a time jumper.
But then he ultimately loses. It's Jet Li's The One meets Friday the 13th. But then you give the ultimate power to some badass hockey version.
They're looking to start it. They're looking to start it back up. I think settlements have been met, and this could be it.
I love this idea, David.
And then you can have him team up with, like, he ends up in some specific reality for the most amount of time. Like, there's a Jason that is just kicking ass, and then you find the leads, your final girl, some other dude, another like a team of teens.
What would you do?
They become the face. Like,
we do like a Back to the Future 2 kind of thing, where you go into the other movies, and you're like,
yeah.
And then maybe he goes in and straight up kills Jason, like before the movie would begin. Like, he just takes him out. Like, oh, Jason's up and running again. He takes him out, and then he can leap to another dimension.
You could do this with technology today.
So that's the pitch. This is how we fix the franchise.
When this drops, when this gets released, listeners, you heard it here first.
I mean, multiverses are all the rage.
Yeah.
Thank you, J.J. Abrams, for making it cool. Back in Star Trek 1 in 2007 or whatever.
That's right.
This is it. This is how
I
you
love
fix
it.
it.
I'm
All right.
down. I'm so down for that. Let's, Peacock is developing some kind of prequel series, so maybe
That's
maybe
true.
you're
Crystal
on to
Lake.
something.
Camp Crystal Lake. That's right. Maybe this is
Yep.
where that's where the new Jason comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that
So-
actually drops this year.
Yes, this year
2023?
sometime on Peacock.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
2023.
So that's me completely diverging from the conversation of this film, but only before we get into the nitty gritty of like the behind the scenes. So
Yeah.
but I got very excited when I realized Jet Li was really the key to this whole thing. And I would insist on Jet Li appearing in the movie.
Well, maybe
Somewhere.
he could play alt Jason.
Yeah. yeah. Maybe one of the Jasons is like a really short martial artist.
Yeah,
who just murders
exactly.
people. I mean,
Oh,
I don't
man.
know. What is he, 5'6"? He's not that short.
I think
Okay,
it's
sorry.
inconsistent, So
We have a lot of Jason craziness to contend with.
yeah,
so.
yeah.
Anyway.
So they bring on kind of a new director, basically. Not so out of left field, but hasn't directed that many movies, but was a huge name in creature special effects, and that's John Carl Buechler, who had done effects in so many big movies throughout the 80s specifically, and had trained under Stan Winston and some of the best. So
I think this guy is actually a really great pick to direct this movie. Just based off his special effects background and everything. I mean, I know we'll get into it, but we miss a lot of what he could have contributed to the special effects kill sequences because of the MPAA. But
yeah,
I mean, just looking at where we ended up with the latest iteration of Jason, like I think this version of Jason is freaking awesome looking.
Well, this becomes I think this version of Jason is really the standard, right? I mean, we'll talk about the casting of Kane Hodder, but his physicality and his look that deteriorated, like gross.
Yeah.
Look, he's been
water zombie.
Yeah, he's been, he's a zombie, and B, he's been underwater, and he's been torn. Like he's actually showing the damage of all the stuff that's been done to him throughout the past few movies, and plus sitting underwater for 10 years. So
right.
Is it really quick, if we're talking timeline, if we were going to talk, let's say what the first movie came out in 1981 80, and then throughout the series we've seen a couple of time jumps now, but also some movies just taking place like very soon after the other. If we were to say 1980 was the actual time of the first movie, what year is it in Friday the 13th Part 7?
So, all right. So walking through
Great
it.
question.
It's a great question, right?
Parts 1, 2, and 3 all happen like one right after
Within
the
a
other.
night. Yeah.
Yeah,
Within a year.
within less
It's like a week.
yeah.
Well, wasn't she?
No, it's
They're
probably a little bit longer than that. It's probably within one summer, really.
Okay.
Because remember that
right.
Adrienne King from the first one is in the beginning of part 2, which
she's back home.
somewhat recovered a little bit.
Yeah.
or
I
started.
thought some months had passed, but maybe not, right?
Yeah,
No,
maybe there's. Yeah, I don't
But
remember. off the
it's
top of my head,
within.
but-
It's a very
but-
short.
Yeah,
2
but-
goes right into 3 though.
correct. 2 goes right into 3,
Okay.
and 3 essentially goes right into 4.
That's
I
what I
think
thought.
there's, I think there's maybe a little bit of a gap, but basically all within the same year. Like,
Yeah.
let's just.
And
say.
then there's a big time jump between 4 and 5.
Yeah. So then I would say there's 5 years between, and that's if you look at the jump from Corey Feldman to the actor who plays him in part 5, that's probably a bigger jump, but we'll call it 5 years.
Sure.
Character wise. So,
All right.
so say it's
I'll give you some.
1985, right? And then
Oh.
6 is unknown how close to part 5 it is. So
Yeah.
say it's the next year. So that's 86 when it actually came out. But then there's a 10-year gap.
10
So
years.
7 takes place 10 years after 6. So this
How
would
do
be,
But
How do
you're
we know
talking it takes place 10 years after
Tommy.
the flashback.
right.
So the majority of the story is 10 years after.
Right. which I think
because we open.
Oh, right. Because that's the thing. So yeah, when is she a little girl? When does that happen in the timeline? Right, like the next summer.
with when she's a little girl. I mean, it's hard to say. That could be happening. It's unclear when that part happens.
It's post Tommy dropping Jason in the water, but
so it would be, which would have been, we're saying that's 86. So that's when she's a little girl is 1986, which would make this 1996.
1996.
So this would be the most.
Hold on.
Can't Tommy be a little older? I mean, that guy in that movie was like.
Wait, but when she's younger, is Jason already in the water?
I think he's in the water already.
They make a point to show it, don't they?
Oh, they do show him. Okay, I couldn't remember. Okay.
So
and then
because they definitely show him when she's older and brings him out of the water, but I couldn't remember.
We see him drown. Well, I think the point is they do the recap where he drowns, and then we see the action of her as a little girl, and her dad dies. So you have to assume that at least happens.
It's happening after. Yeah, that's a good point.
Within some, but probably not too far removed from it.
This is the most 80s looking 90s movie of all time.
1996, here we go. So okay, all right. So now part 7 is happening in 1996.
Yep, there you go. Where you're wearing short jean shorts and
feathered hair, and it's amazing.
And your friend's birthday, where you go to Spencer's Gifts to get every gift for him.
Yeah.
Well, when you were in Hollywood in the 80s, you never thought it was going to change. It was the greatest time ever.
Yeah.
Everything's sort of locked and frozen in time. Anyway, okay. See, this is me getting in the nitty gritty.
I love it.
No, it's good.
Timeline.
I'm glad we clarified that.
Yeah, I mean, which just before we go back to the story here, just going back to John Carl Buechler, just a really interesting choice as director. He's really leaning on the special effects, the mechanical effects. He's the one that casts Kane Hodder as Jason instead of bringing C.J. Graham back, who was also a good Jason, but wasn't an actor, wasn't really a stuntman, was brought in sort of on a whim. And Buechler had worked with Kane Hodder before and was so impressed with how, all in Kane is as a performer that, this is the guy. So he's really, his MO is to make these gags as interesting and different as possible. So, and then obviously very into the telekinesis storyline and flushing out the Tina character. So, all right, now let's talk.
He had done a couple other movies too up to this point.
He'd done Troll and Cellar Dweller.
Yeah, which Troll 2 is certainly
a timeless classic,
a timeless cult classic, considered maybe the worst sequel horror movie ever made. Oh, no. Like, there are documentaries and publications about how incredibly ridiculous it is. Not that he was a part of that, but
he did the first one.
He did create the first one.
Yeah,
which is also a cult classic within itself. But
he would go on to do Ghoulies 3. Ghoulies Go to College.
There you go. Now it comes back around.
And with producer Ian Patterson.
Yep.
Who also produced this movie.
Yeah. And another bit of trivia about John Carl Buechler is that he's, I think, the only person within the calendar year 1988 works on Friday the 13th Part 7, Halloween 4, and Nightmare on Elm Street 4.
Holy cow.
He works, he does everywhere. Some of the creature effects for both the Halloween and
so he hit films.
He's competing
3
with and working for all those.
He's the Bill Paxton of the horror genre.
Exactly.
Bill Paxton was killed by a Terminator, a Predator, and
a xenomorph.
An alien. Xenomorph.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. So all right, let's go back to the story. So we're moving on from Tommy Jarvis. The Tommy storyline is concluded to this very day. That's part 6 is the last time we see Tommy.
Kind of wish he showed up here, but that's okay.
I feel like the character should have gone on, but I
Same here.
also understand, or at least come back somewhere along the way. There's more story there for sure.
Yeah.
And also, let's bring our dear friend Kimberly Beck, who plays Tommy's sister, another surviving character, back into the franchise. And
yeah, great final girl.
Happening. You can get Corey and Kimberly back, both of them. So, all right. So we've got a new character with Tina Shepard, and we see that the very, right when the movie opens, we see her having a flashback of this incident where she murders her dad. I mean, her dad is also a wife beater. Like he is beating up,
literally
not a cool guy.
No, he's a bad guy. He's beating up the mom, and this is where Tina, I think we're assuming, has her first encounter with telekinesis. That she, as she runs out to the dock, and as the dad follows her, and her rage at him sinks, kind of like implodes the dock, where he falls underwater, is knocked unconscious, and drowns. And then we flash forward to present day, 1996, where she is, under the care of Dr. Cruz, played by Terry Kiser, and her mother, played by Susan Blue, who are treating her and trying to. Dr. Cruz is pretty quickly, it's clear he's trying to exploit her telekinetic powers and trying to like bully her into using them and controlling, her powers. So we have this storyline going on concurrently with a birthday party, Michael's birthday party at Crystal Lake.
Yeah.
Just characters we do not know at all. Just generic teen characters are all gathering at the lake house for a birthday party, and we know where this is all going. So so that's the setup for the movie, and Dr. Cruz is going to take Tina to, I think, his cabin, which is right next door to their cabin, where he's going to force her to deal with her traumatic past and go to the place where it started to try to, he's really trying to get her to harness her powers.
Is it his cabin? Or his cabin?
It might not be his cabin, but it's.
I mean, because it's the same. It's the cabin.
Maybe it's their cabin. Right?
Yeah, it's the cabin where her dad died. It'd be
right.
Awfully coincidental if he had the cabin next door.
There's a family there every week out of the year, but it was their week.
Yeah.
So we have our characters kind of converge, at Crystal Lake, where everything's set up, and then. And Brent, do you want to get into how does Jason Voorhees come into play here? He's, of course, sitting underwater, having been chained up and weighted down by Tommy Jarvis at the end of part 6. He's just underwater waiting for 10 years.
Just waiting for a young, upset, telekinetic, superpowered Tina to have all the right buttons pushed from her diabolical doctor. And, get her so raged up that she goes outside, starts feeling bad about the fact that she'd used her powers to accidentally kill her father, gets a sense that there's something under the water, and decides to resurrect it. And boy, was she mistaken. Not her dad at all, but it's our buddy Jason back from the dead. Now in full zombie mode, and as certainly someone who at this point has taken on a supernatural ability to walk amongst the living and slaughter helpless teens for decades to come.
Fantastic.
Damn.
That's you hit the nail on the head right there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I couldn't be more pleased. I couldn't be more excited about how this went down.
Yeah, and so we've got this,
Could be more pleased.
In general, that's the thing about this movie, that it works on one level and doesn't work on the other, because we've got a great, the triangle of characters with Tina and her mother and Dr. Cruz are interesting and good performers. with characters that have motivations and a history, and actors that are bringing that out. And Susan Blue too, just to mention, is a huge name in the voiceover world. She did RC and Transformers the movie, and then the series after that, and Gem and the Holograms, and just voices in pretty much every cartoon that was happening in the 80s, and all of those, which were epic shows. So
yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, there's a ton of things in this movie that I think do really, really work, and there are a lot of things that just unfortunately handcuff it, right?
Yeah.
And make it not work. Like I think, like we mentioned before, I think the director is a great pick for the director. I think Tina's a great final girl. Love the telekinetic kind of power. That's a new twist, kind of, at a time when we're not getting a whole bunch of superhero movies and things like that. Like, it's kind of cool to see these two supernatural forces face off in what would now become very commonplace sort of plot device. But like back then, it just wasn't happening very often. I think that Terry Kiser is, if Terry Crews was in this, that would be interesting too. But when
we remake part 7, part 7.
Yeah. Terry Crews is definitely in it. But Terry Kiser's fantastic, but then again, the MPAA totally gutted this movie. It was terrible. All the different side teen characters are pretty much throwaway, which is problematic.
I mean, it really is repeating specifically the 4th movie, but also the 1st, the 2nd, all of them. It's the same, generic group of teens. You've got your nerd, you've got your your mean girl, you've got your couples that have paired up, and I will say I do like Susan Blair Sullivan as Melissa. I think Melissa's a good sort of another villain character.
Hey, where do you think you're going?
I'm going back to bed. You want to come?
Look, Melissa, just stay here with us.
It's not my style.
Don't go out there!
Fuck you. No, fuck you both!
They're not really given anything to work with, and thus I don't think you're getting the best performances either, and you don't even, they're getting killed right when you meet them. So
yeah,
there's multiple characters who are Jason encounters in the woods that are there for whatever reason and killed immediately. Why do you care? Why do you?
Well, and it seems like they're always killed in the same spot. Like, it doesn't seem like they had, it made it like, it felt very contained, like it didn't feel, I don't know. In the other movies, Camp Crystal Lake and the kind of the spread around the lake seemed pretty vast and large. And, it was kind of a big area, but it just seemed like a lot of reuse, a lot of like similar, like, it's like, oh, that's the same log that was pushed over in the other scene.
Yeah. Like, let's just grab this where, just somewhere in the woods right here. Like, there's no real sense of space.
Right. And so that was kind of a bummer. I think, the MPAA kind of, neutering the gore is really bad. I mean, some of the going back and kind of like reading through and finding like some of the information on the kills, I guess at some point they existed where you could, they got rid of I don't think there could be a director's cut, but they have some raw footage that you can see some of them, but they talk about how gruesome some of them were.
Oh, yeah.
And, I just feel like if we really had a chance to see those and see the director in his wheelhouse, like kind of creating that stuff, like it would have been a completely different kind of thing for that. Because Kane Hodder is great. He's super menacing. I think you add that gore back in and some of that brutality, and like this movie stands up on a couple other legs as far as it being entertaining and a good entry, as other than just like this neat little telekinesis connection.
Yeah, I mean, Kane Hodder was just brilliant casting. Like it was his physicality, like actually brings
Well, yeah,
some
he's
character.
a stuntman.
Like, well, yeah, but I mean, he actually like he almost has emotion. Like he's the first actor to play Jason that actually is able to get some semblance of emotion out of him and reaction.
Well, I mean, his movements all seem like fueled by rage. Like there's some kind of like, even though he's like walking through the woods and stuff like that, there's still kind of a fire behind the motion, right?
Yeah.
And on top of that, you know, like he is a stunt person. That physicality that you're talking about, like he's taking those falls, like he's bringing all that into the character. I mean, shit, the scene where he gets lit on fire, like that's really Kane Hodder getting lit on fire. And at the time set a record for the longest on-screen, fire stunt ever done in film. And so like, which is all pretty awesome. You know, like if you think about it, like that's a really kind of kick-ass thing. And it obviously translated because Kane Hodder ends up playing Jason multiple times over
more than anybody else.
Over several of the next over the course of the next several movies.
4 times.
And I mean, he, you know, it's
well, and that's after, you know, he does that fire after he's had a significant burn injury on a prior film and a fire stunt gone wrong. Like Kane Hodder, his neck and chest has a horrible scar damage on it from being lit on fire. And this was like,
he was like, let's do it. Let's go.
He just
twice as long.
Well, and there's, you know, he does some major stunts here, like, you know, being hung, and the scene on the front porch where, you know, this is all Tina, you know, once Jason reveals himself and is one by one killing all the teens off, and then they finally, Tina and oh God, what's his name? Tina and
the boyfriend?
Yeah, Kevin Blair, or Kevin who plays, what's his name? Nick.
Nick.
Yeah, and then Tina and Nick finally come around to the fact that it's Jason doing this, and she fights back, and she's using her telekinetic powers on him. When she crushes him on the front porch, like that's a real roof, and the center was balsa wood, so it would break around him. But look at how it flattens him.
Yeah.
Like he said that was probably like almost, he said he thought it was like 600 pounds just crushing down on him.
Jesus.
And he just took it, and I mean, luckily he was okay. But there's, you know, he gets this is the most Jason gets beat up by somebody. But yeah, like you were mentioning, the MPAA damage that was done to this movie is really astounding, because it really cut the legs out from under it. I mean, there's actually very little gore in the movie. I mean, just you see a little bit of blood here and there, but especially for how he's killing these people. And it's sad to see now, because it's so tame compared to what even would come just a few years later.
Well, I mean, in '88, the MPAA was like all over everybody's ass about,
well, especially
that
Friday
kind
the
of stuff.
13th.
But Friday the 13th was like, it's, you know, like most scrutinized franchise. I mean, and not just this installment, like it had been scrutinized the previous, you know.
Ever since, again, another thing, ever since part 4, you know, that's where they turned around on it. And knowing that John Carl Buechler was a special effects, you know, a creature effects guy, it seems like maybe they were being a little more harsh on him than they would have, you know, some of the prior directors. But because really, like, they cut, you know, every special death that he was bringing to this is getting taken away from him.
Yeah, I mean, they zoom in, they cut away. Like, I mean, it's very neutered.
And
sure.
It's annoying, because it's like the whole of it is like, I'm bored by almost every one of these kills. There's like 3 of them that I kind of like, oh, it's an interesting thing, but not even just because you need to see the results, but just the way things happen. I mean, he just like walks into a room and just like parry, like just skewer, like boom, you're dead. Like Oh, great, good job.
Yeah.
Like that's very basic, but I'm not a fan of most of these kills like at all. Like they're not, I feel like, oh, these are kind of boring and tame, and that
I
stinks.
really and you can see, so the sad thing is that Paramount ended up destroying the originals. So you can see, rough cuts of the the uncut version of these deaths on wherever on YouTube. It's on some of the DVDs. The Ben's death, where he gets his head crushed outside the van, is very quick in the movie, and there's kind of a disturbing sound effect that goes with it. When you see the uncut version, I mean, they literally take it like he just crunches the head down till it's like a golf ball, like, and there's just blood exploding everywhere, and it's horrible. And then he turns around and stabs his girlfriend with the party horn with the honk.
Yeah, little honk in there. And get the air flowing.
I mean, and then like Terry Crews, Terry Crews, Terry Kiser, Dr. Crews. That's a character you really want to see get killed.
Yeah,
and
that death stunk. Oh, yeah. That was so bad. Like, especially because he's so menacing with the weed whacker saw blade thing, and then like it's just like boop. Like he's dead. We got him. Like,
and the director's cut of it has like all of his guts coming out, and to the point where it jams the weed whacker because it's so thick with like intestines and stuff.
Oh my god.
Yeah. But
it's not meant to cut intestines, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes as a director, like you're gonna go further because the MPAA is gonna cut it down. Right, so if you make it really extreme, you'll probably get half of it, which is what you really wanted in the first place. But,
right. Yeah. You do stuff knowing you'll probably get a cut, but like you just tone, it just lets the other stuff get through.
Yeah. Exactly. So, it was just, obviously incredibly frustrating and disappointing for Buechler, and is, continuing the damage to the franchise, because that's really what people, teenagers going to see these movies, like that's what they wanted. That's why they were going.
Well,
so
absolutely.
And it's not an R rating. It's not like, like it's kind of,
well,
they were
go as far as you can.
Yeah, they were fighting against the X rating though. That's the thing. So they had to make all those changes so that they wouldn't be X rated.
They sent the film to the MPAA 9 times.
9 times?
9 times.
Which is huge. Like usually you'll send it twice, maybe 3 times, but 9 times, it kept getting kicked back. 9 times.
9.
Yeah. They had to cut 8 deaths out of the scene. Or out of the movie.
So there was even more deaths, but there aren't that many characters, right?
No, I think they cut.
No, I think they cut down 8 of the deaths.
Yeah.
Oh, you meaning like reduced?
Yeah, they reduced. Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, there's 8 other characters we didn't even see.
No, sorry, I said that weird, but no, they trimmed.
I know what you mean.
The gore, yeah.
Well, that's why I was like, I wasn't sure. Like, you got to keep cutting and cutting and cutting until they're going to say, okay, that's fine, that's acceptable. That's a bummer.
Well, and
that's a real bummer.
Buechler would argue that, like, look, at the time, this is 88, but he's referring to Temple of Doom. That Steven Spielberg does a big movie where someone reaches in and pulls a heart out while the person's living. And that gets, it gets the PG-13, or helps create the PG-13 rating. But that's what they get. They don't get an X.
No.
So he gets that, and while they have to fight, and the movie itself was gutted, pun intended.
That movie was directed by Steven Spielberg, though.
That's true.
So you're not gonna. And it's really the only horrible part, aside from the child abuse and slavery and brains eating and racism, and other than that.
Yeah, and then he would say
ripe with issues.
He would say later on, 10 years later with Private Ryan, like that's way more gory.
Oh my god!
Than this. But it's a little bit different when it's portraying something reality based and historical that actually happened versus, you know, a fictional character running around killing people.
Well,
so,
and it's post that, you know, that's post Natural Born Killers when that after Natural Born Killers, man, I feel like people were just like, okay,
just do whatever you want.
Yeah. I mean, that honestly is what it felt like. Like, I feel like that movie broke the MPAA of that. And I don't know that that's actually true, but like that movie stands out to me as one where it was grotesquely like, I mean, it's just kind of a grotesque movie just in general. And so, you know,
well, the audiences were so desensitized throughout the 90s that it was like the expectations had changed and it was kind of unstoppable that, you know, they were going to see, they wanted more and more and more. But
now, honestly, you could, if you took the nudity out of this movie, you wouldn't need to make any other cuts to show this on TV.
Wow.
Like big one of the big 3 channels could air it and it would be like not a problem.
The
just going back to the teens, you know, so there's not a lot of chemistry there among the cast. Again, they're not given much to work with, but specifically between Tina and Nick's characters, they're just like that. And I don't know, you know, Kevin Spertus, who plays Nick, would come out of the closet years later, and maybe that had something to do with it, that there just wasn't that, you know, true like sexual chemistry between those two characters, which, I mean, the characters had it, but the performers didn't really have it.
I don't know, man. I mean, like, there's plenty of homosexual actors out there who play opposite in hetero relationships and pull off the chemistry. And, you know, I just think you're either an actor or with talent or you're not, you know. And I don't mean to speak poorly, but this is that whole section and writing of it seems very soap opera-y, and that is probably due to the writing in a lot of cases, but also just the actors, the level of the actors. You know, I think there's kind of a higher tier that we've mentioned as far as Tina and Terry and Sue and Kane, and then there's kind of just, you know, supporting cast who
I could believe though that Tina and Nick were into each other in that film. Like, really? I don't know.
I never bought it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, because everyone else sort of brings it down a little. I don't know. Like, but you know, he has sort of that, you know, all-American quarterback look to him, that like at least he sort of looks like he's the strongest guy, you know, macho, you know, jawline, like big, like he looks like he works out.
He looks like a jock.
Yeah.
You know, he's a jock dude. So I could understand, like, I almost bought that he was more attracted to her than she was attracted to him. To be honest.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, he's pursuing her for half the movie for no reason. He just sees her and is attracted to her. He just sees her and he's like, damn, I gotta get with this.
I think she's just looking for a way out of the cabin to get away from her doctor. You know, like,
well, it's like, look, there's a bunch of people my age at the house next door. Like, let me be a teen let
me be normal for a minute.
Yeah, it makes sense. Let's go to the party.
Yeah.
Did you guys both connect very well with Eddie when you go to the house parties with your friends and you just obsess over movies and the greatest directors of all time? Like, the movie Eddie was the movie nerd.
Yeah.
That he was the biggest dork, but his dorky thing was movies.
Yeah.
But also sci-fi obscure movies.
Oh yeah.
Like, you know,
he wasn't. Did he say he was rejected by the finest?
Yeah.
Like that, but like, you know, did you feel a kinship with Eddie as the biggest film nerds?
If you want to talk about spin-off, like, that's your character. You need an Eddie origin.
Eddie the 13th.
Eddie origins. Eddie the 13th.
Eddie the 12th. Melissa's character was just so kind of ridiculous, over the top. You know, mean girl that
this villain girl. Like, here's this guy who absolutely has paid no attention to me, and I'm going to hate the girl that he's attracted to and do everything I can to get with this guy, to even like mess with Eddie.
Yep.
Oh, Melissa.
Heidi Kozak was one of the teens who, you know, is the one who dies in the lake, and we also know her from Slumber Party Massacre 2 and several other horror films of the 80s. But it was good to see her again. But yeah, just, you know, I think they were trying. You know, I think I felt bad for the actors, because it's, you don't have, you know, this movie was greenlit in like October 87 and was in theaters May 88. So, you know, not a lot of time fleshing out the script, not a lot of time shooting the movie. So I'm sure this is one of those that it was like, got it in the first take, great, move on. You know, like, we're not doing performance, you know, more takes for performance here. So
no.
Especially when you have all those characters like together, sometimes like you got a light to just shoot whatever, all the angles.
What's even more sad is they probably didn't spend a lot of time on the actors acting because they wanted more time to set up all the special effects and gore scenes, and then all those got cut to shit.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you know, I think a lot of the actors were frustrated because Buechler basically spent time with Kane Hodder and with Lar Park Lincoln, and that was it. You know, like, they got all his attention. And
that's interesting, because I read something a little bit different, just where he was like, most of the actors really resonated, or he resonated with most of the actors just because he was kind of a lighthearted, jovial guy on the set and things like that. I mean, I agree that it appears to me in watching this that they did not get much direction as far as the acting scenes for the movie, but I didn't hear that the actors were upset with him in any way.
No, I'll dial that back a little bit. I think they personally really liked him, but I think just as a director directing their performance, like, that's where they didn't get enough time with him. So
yeah, and he probably, you know, I mean, he's still, you know, he's a special effects guy. He's got this perfect opportunity to really, you know, showcase that element in this movie, you know, before getting totally you know, cut apart. But I could understand him focusing on that and you losing some attention on the actors. That makes sense.
But the big, you know, so we have lots of big stunts and special effects gags, both for the kills of the teens and the, you know, what Tina is doing to Jason along the way, and how badly he's getting beaten up. But it all kind of leads to the end of the film, which was of much debate again, of how are we going to wrap this up. And it, I think story-wise, it makes sense to have it end where it began, and Tina, in a last-ditch effort, summons up her dead father from the lake, who you know, this is a common thing. I think it was a Mancuso sort of mandate that, like, it ends with somebody getting pulled in the water. That's a Friday the 13th like staple.
Yeah.
But this time it's the father pulling Jason back underwater, back to his watery grave. And how this was going to be done was, again, under much debate. And Barbara Sachs was, you know, was not really, she was trying to maintain what Frank Mancuso wanted, but also didn't creatively agree with Buechler a lot of the time, and was pushing back pretty much everywhere she could. And the look of the father coming out of the water, who suddenly we're rooting for, who is a
listen, everyone's got issues.
I guess he atoned for it by being underwater also for 10 years. But
being murdered for 10 years, I think, makes up for being a terrible human being.
Sure.
One slap off screen. I mean, what are you gonna do? No, I'm just kidding. I'm not defending domestic violence by any stretch of the imagination. But I mean, you know, they did establish that, you know, Tina still missed her father. I mean, even if your father does, you know, hit your mom, you still, that's there's conflict. You love, how can you love someone who does terrible things, right? You know, so there at some, Tina is still going to love her father, know where he is. She's still, you know, and no matter how bad of a person he is, does he deserve to die? That's a question. She killed him sort of inadvertently, like she wanted to exact some revenge. And you know, so again, I'm not excusing his behavior that we don't really see, but we understand very quickly what kind of guy he is.
Well, he never got a chance to sort of repent for his for, you know, or save himself from that, right? So this is the moment.
This is it. Like, so that, you know, if he's going to be a tortured dead soul, at least, you know, at 10 years later, he can be used to take Jason down. So he's not the ultimate hero of the story. Yeah. I think he is an instrument of the hero, which is who is Tina.
Right. But it was the look of that character that Barbara pushed back on, and it was,
well, was it that at plus the MPAA? I wonder if at that point, you know, like,
no, this one was her, because she didn't even want it to be shot. They did shoot at least stills of it, of the father.
Be more horrific.
Well, yeah, he was like,
he's been in the water for like 10 years.
Yeah,
like he should be all like.
That's what I didn't understand. That's what I understand. He just had like a loose couple patches of loose skin.
He looked like he had been like down there for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, that doesn't look right.
So there was another sort of falling out over this between Buechler and Sachs, and just, you know, everywhere he turned, he was running into, you know, problems here. But so it ended up, you know, the version with him with no zombie and just looking like was fresh, you know, in the water, popping up and getting rid of Jason. So and then that's where it ends. That's where there is a deleted scene and another alternate ending where, after we see Nick and Tina wheeled off in the ambulance, we go back to the lake and we see a fisherman who's, you know, pulls out a fish, and then Jason pops up out of the water and behind him pulls him in, just like the end of the first movie and the third movie, and, you know, many of them. But
yes,
I was hoping she got put in the ambulance. We see the two of them in there, and then in the driver's seat is Jason, and he puts sunglasses down and drives off. Perfect. Like, now that's an ending.
Well, like, you know, and Buechler wanted to do sort of like, you know, a separate. He wanted to do a sequel to this movie specifically, like I guess 7.5, where, you know, Tina is in like a mental institution, and Jason, you know, heads there to track her down. Very similar to probably, you know, Halloween 2.
Halloween 2.
There is a sequel to this movie. It's a fan film called Roseblood, which takes it's like 13 months after part 7. I mean, it was just made in 2021, but Tina is back. Terry Kiser's back.
What? They all did it?
I mean, they're on the cast list. I haven't seen it, but, you know,
maybe play themselves.
Maybe it's flashbacks. I mean, they're all listed. Yeah, Kevin Spertus is back. Also known as Kevin Blair.
We gotta dig
that up.
Yeah,
gotta resurrect that. I mean, I guess it just happened. So
yeah, so it came out in 2021. So 2
years
ago
they didn't have anything to do during COVID, so
so
like everyone's like, well, we gotta make something.
Yeah, I don't know how Terry Kiser comes back, you know, because
maybe he's got a twin brother who's also a
could be, but yeah, it's called Roseblood, a Friday the 13th fan film.
Interesting. All right, we'll check it out.
I mean, so of all the deaths in this film, have we talked like, and of course they're all muted and like toned down into nothing, but like, is there any that stand out at least, like, well, this one's the best one for me?
For me, it's Ben's head crushing. That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's the one. But what about you guys? What do you think? Well, you know, before you say, we have a total of 16 deaths in the movie. That's in this film. That brings our running total for the series up to 99.
Ooh.
So we'll have to find out on our next episode who is the 100th kill in the Friday.
Oh yeah, nice.
Let's see. Here's a hint. It's the very first one in part 8.
Yes, it is.
Yes. That would make 99 tick up to 100. That's great.
Yeah. All right. What about you guys? What kills stood out to you?
I mean, for me, the most iconic, and I wish that it hadn't gotten cut because I think it's pretty brutal anyway. But my understanding is that it was much, much more brutal. Is the sleeping bag slammed up against the tree, which is
yeah, I forgot about that.
Which is kind of like, I mean, and it's been redone. It was redone, and there are at least homages to it in other Jason movies, and even in the Friday the 13th video game. It's one of the like super kills, and I think that one was great. Originally, apparently, in this version, the cut down version, he just slams the sleeping bag up against the tree once and crushes Judy's body, and she's pretty much done. And that's pretty brutal. But like in the original cut, or before it was cut down, he slammed her up against the tree several times, and it was
like 6 times.
Yeah, apparently it was just even more and more gruesome sounding. And so you can see, Kane Hodder is pretty wiped out by the 6th swing. Yeah, but you can see this pile of bloody like mass down at the end of the sleeping bag. Yeah. So I think that one's pretty iconic. It's probably my favorite one.
But the reference later on, which we will get to further down the road, the reference to this death is genius when it comes up, I think, in one of the later films. But yeah. David, what about you?
I'm more like the savagery of when Russell dies. He's waiting to jump in the lake. He's taking his clothes off, and then because it's just like this swooping motion, like, so it's not gory, but you see the aftermath too, and it's just like, that's just like a great kill. Like it just like the idea of it, and then
seems very sporty.
Yeah. But also like even Melissa, who died at the end of the film, like just taking an axe to the head, and then he tosses her. They're compared to most of the other deaths, like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like that was at least kind of savage. It may not be very gory, but like I think the savagery. But
the Melissa one apparently was much, much gorier originally.
Both of them
showing her head like split.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. But like for what we got to see, like at least like that's kind of horrific. Like I mean, probably iconically, the sleeping bag one is probably like pretty awesome because it's just so savage and brutal. But like those, like I think the MTV Movie Awards were starting up that year or something like that, because there is or maybe it was a few years later, they did a tribute to Jason and his like iconic kills, and I remember the audience reacting to that sleeping bag one, and it might have been like they were like ironically honoring him, like it was like a comedy bit, but he's just like I forget, I don't remember it, but I remember seeing that slam and just being like, whoa, but everyone's laughing at it because I think they were like honoring him or something. Like he's such a, I don't remember the bit.
Yeah, you got like a lifetime achievement award or something like in character. And there's a shot where when Melissa opens the door and you just see Jason standing there and he just raises the axe. It just like there's something about that particular shot, and the image of it I think became the image of the Nintendo game and became more of a publicity image, just like straight at you. Like that got me a little bit this time. Jason's never really like scared me or anything, but
no, but it's brutal.
Yeah, but if like I opened a door and that was what was standing there, like that would
very
be
imposing.
Yes. Is it time? Dare we talk about box office glory?
Oh, there we go.
Okay, so Paramount and Frank Mancuso are really hoping for a big comeback here. I think, they know the MPAA has cut it down. Obviously, that's affecting the movie, but is it enough to either sway the audience one way or the other? They will see. The movie had a $2.8 million budget, so that $2 to $3 million budget is where they're kind of sitting at for a lot of these later movies. So I don't know if you could do it much cheaper than that, but
no, I don't think so.
Yeah, it opens up May 13th, 1988 at number 1.
Wow.
No competition that weekend. It's number one, hands down, the only new release. It's ahead of Colors, which we covered. You can check it out in the archives at ReconCinemation.com, and Beetlejuice. But I will point out at this point, May 1988, that Three Men and a Baby, another movie we've covered, is still in the top 12, 25 weeks after release. So that's how huge
that movie was huge.
That's how, and then Fatal, we didn't really talk about it, but Fatal Attraction coming out in 1987 had a huge impact on this. That, that movie was patterned like a horror movie, that they were using a lot of the scares and jump scares and techniques and that horror movies use, but it was done more artistically and worked for mass audiences.
I have never seen Fatal Attraction.
Oh my, you really should. It's a big movie.
I know. I need to.
Yeah. It's if you're a Glenn Close, Michael Douglas fan, it's a must watch. It's
I feel like I know all about it, and I remember when it was out and a thing. And I don't know why I never saw it.
Yeah.
But it's never.
Well, it's, we talk about all the time that some of these movies just slip by you and then you never really have the opportunity to come back to it. So,
well, we'll have to put it on our, we'll have to do it sometime for the show.
It's on the ReconCine list.
Great.
Okay. So it ends up with opening weekend. It ends up with $8.2 million. That's, a really solid opening weekend. I mean, it's almost quadrupled its budget already, but it slows down after that. It only ends up with a $19.1 million domestic run, which is down from Friday 6, which had 19.7. So not trending in the right direction. The downward slide is going to continue here. Again, it's not losing money. It's still making money, but it's not making the kind of money that Nightmare on Elm Street is. So, Nightmare on Elm Street on a similar budget is pulling in $49 million. So, it's a $30 million difference between the two. It ends up number 51 of 1988 between another sequel, Police Academy 5, and Cocoon: The Return. So sequels this year. Also, sliding back from Friday the 13th Part 6, which was at number 45 of 1986. So it's back another 6 spots for 88. Financially speaking, it is the number 9 ranked of the series, right between Part 6 and Jason X. So again, it's down there. It's down towards the bottom.
So hold on. That would mean then Jason X is the 10th in its box office.
You
right?
got it.
Yeah.
10th movie, 10th at the box office.
Check it out.
Yeah. We'll talk about gimmicks, everything. So going forward in the franchise, which we will hit over the coming years, we'll have one more Friday the 13th episode later on this year, which would be Jason Takes Manhattan.
Oh boy.
You've got gimmicks all the way through the rest of the series. So,
it's all gimmicks.
If it's not telekinesis, it's going to Manhattan, or it's body swapping, and then it's going into outer space in the future. Like, you're really reaching before we finally come back, and we only have one more left in our Paramount version of Friday the 13th before they do finally make a deal with New Line Cinema, and all leading to Freddy versus Jason in 2003.
Just picture Josh Brolin appears on the timeline and starts murdering Jason. And
Jeez, man.
Appears, and he's like, "Who are you?" And he's like, "I'm Jason Voorhees." Oh my God, Josh Brolin is Jason Voorhees until he dies at the end. And then we introduce
Act 1.
Yeah. He's gonna die, but then there's gonna be other heroes who take up the mantle to fight Jason across time and space.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that 2003 is when Freddy versus Jason came out.
Well, yeah, I mean, it took 15 years to make that happen.
But it's been 20 years since it did happen.
Yeah. And they've talked
Okay.
about, you know, Freddy versus Jason
We're old.
versus Ash. You know, they've talked about all sorts of combinations of characters, and you know, like people really wanting Bruce Campbell in the mix here, fighting them, and you know, it only happened the one time, and we'll cover it down the road.
It would be such a it's such a money grab now. You can do that. You can get everybody.
Well, it was a
involved.
money grab. It would have been a money grab then. I mean, I understood New Line's point of, you know, they didn't need Jason. Jason needed Freddy.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but that was the time to do it. Even 93 was past the point. You know, the interest was gone for both of them at that point.
Yeah.
So, you know, here in the late 80s was really prime Freddy. It could have reinvigorated Jason. That was when it was really should have happened. But all right. So, you know, look, again, just wrapping it up and looking back at it, is this movie as bad as, you know, a lot of people dog on it. A lot of people just don't, you know, don't appreciate it, and they see the negatives with it. But, you know, now having done the deep dive, what do you guys think? Does it age as badly as people think? What do you have to say?
It's as good as any of the other ones, except for the part 5, I guess. That's my opinion.
I like it. You know,
it's got things. It's got individual. It's got specific things that are very entertaining and unique to its movie. But
yeah,
this is all the same to me.
I think it has things working for it. You know, as we mentioned before, it's got something new and different. It's got some good performances. It's got the introduction of Kane Hodder. So I think there's a lot in the plus category.
Yeah, I think that's where I'd stick it too. I think David's right. Like, it's not any worse than any of the bad shit from the other ones that are bad, that have bad elements to them. But to your point, John, it's got a handful of elements that are better than some of the other ones as well.
Yeah.
So Kane Hodder, I think, is a huge plus for this and just the franchise. And I think he's the most iconic Jason now. You know, I mean, I think he's the one that most people will say, like, who played Jason? He's the name recognition. And he didn't even show up until now. Right. So
I'm a big fan of Ted White from the fourth film,
he was great.
Who just passed away, I think, earlier this year. So R.I.P. But yeah, Kane is really the iconic one.
Yeah. So yeah, and I enjoyed this one from top to bottom. I think it's fun.
Now, if it's 1988 and you're doing a little bit of recasting, sometimes we check in about this, but could Kurt Russell have been in this movie? And who would he have been? I think we know the answer.
I think we do know the answer, but I think the casting there was good the way it was.
Yeah. But a Kurt Russell as Dr. Cruz, that's magic right there.
With that outfit from Car Wash or used cars, with the glasses and the plaid jacket.
And the hair from Overboard.
And the hair from Overboard.
Yeah.
And oh man, that'd be great.
Yeah.
He could have definitely been in this movie.
He could have, yeah. But yeah, interesting. Not the best of times for the Friday the 13th franchise, and but we're going to continue our look back at it later on this year. I believe it's October when we're going to be looking at Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, which was, I think, the first one I saw on VHS, really. But yeah, so looking forward to that, and it's always fun to deep dive these with you guys. And David, I know it's your absolute favorite when we hit these movies up.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Well, we are going to be getting back to our regular programming and our next episode coming up. We've got a lot of fun things coming up this year. We're trying to take a look back at more, get back to the roots of the show and films that have not had the spotlight on them in quite some time, and maybe some cult movies that are not as popular but well loved, and we're gonna take a look back at some of those. So a little bit different of a lineup this year than some of our previous years. So looking forward to that, and we want to just say take a look at our social media. Check us out we're on Instagram and Twitter, and we're ReconCinemation Podcast. You can check out our archives at ReconCinemation.com for all our back episodes. Don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and review. That does mean something, and it'll boost the download or the listens for the show. So we'd appreciate that. And quick thank you to our friends E.K. Wimmer for the theme music. Check out his podcast Laser Graves, and Curtis Moore. Thank you for the poster, just going along with all the other amazing Friday the 13th posters. All right, well. Thank you for listening, guys, and stay tuned. Check out our next episode of ReconCinemation.
Take care.
Bye now.
David, does it feel good to be the new blood? You've been the new blood for this film. Are you happy?
Oh yeah, I know. I feel right at home.
All right.